Hi guys, Eric in the alley again. Today, I was just waiting for a CV boot for Jim's Honda Accord to come, but it's coming tomorrow, so no big deal. I figure I got everything done on the other side, both the ball joints, and I'm just, playing around in the shop, seeing what to do. It's always a good time to practice your setup, do an RC test. I mean, sometimes the results might surprise you on something you don't think's bad, but what I did, I did an RC test with voltage and amperage, and what I'm seeing looks like a bad starter, but I'm going to include the waveform at the end if you guys got any ideas. Ever seen this before, but it's a couple flat spots, couple dropouts, so it just doesn't look right. Okay, and what I also was going to do is I probed the fuel injector, and I pulled the fuel injector fuse and put a current loop in it, and I got my low amp clamp and I set it up. I just wanted to see if I could get the injectors and or one injector and all the current ramps, and so there's some noise on it, but I'll show you how I did it. And it doesn't really, we're not really looking for nothing, but it's a good time. That's all you're doing is practicing. You know what they say, practice is going to make you perfect, or at least close as a mechanic can get. Alright, I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to show you where I got everything probed, and see if we can do a quick test again. Okay, this is kind of the setup I'm going with here. I just got one lead from channel 1 going to the different color wire. These are only 2 wire injectors. These are pretty easy. There's only one wire that changes color. In this case, it's the first one there. 3 wire coils, you're definitely going to want to look at a 3 wire injectors rather, you're definitely going to want to look at a schematic. But being these are only 2, these are very easy. You go to the odd man out. You want to go to the one that's a different color. And then I was just going ground on engine, because on the battery I was getting a little bit too much AC voltage. It's a little bit over it, but I mean, this thing's got 200 and I believe 10,000 miles on it, so it's up there. A lot of things on it haven't ever been replaced. It's mostly all original. But what I'm going to do is run this. That's going back to the scope. I have the HS512, so I'm using a 10 times attenuator. So that'll bring my maximum voltage up to 160 volts. You always want to use an attenuator with fuel injectors, or you're going to fry your scope. If you have the 502, what I'd do is I'd start out with a times 20 attenuator. You might be okay with a times 10, because I'm not on the highest scale. I'm only on the 16 volt on this. Should be okay. But I always like starting out a little bit overkill. And with injectors, what I like to remember is I like to set up for 200 volts. Whatever you're going to do, get close to 200 volts, and you're not going to hurt your scale, and you could always go down from there. But I don't want no surprises. I'm kind of the overkill until I see what I got, and then I go back. But a times 20 is always good to start with. Actually, it's one of the reasons I got the 512. I'm afraid, I'm not afraid, but I'm the kind that always wants the overkill. But the 502, if you pay attention, you're not going to get in any trouble either. Okay, I have the amp clamp into the fuel injector fuse, and I'm going to turn on my amp clamp to 20 amp, make sure the battery comes on, 0 a few times, and I'm going to put it around the fuse loop. Now on the actual H scope, I have on a 75 kilosample scale or rate, I have channel 1, which would be the amp clamp. I have on a 1.1 volt scale, and I have the AES-20 that I downloaded from the probe library. And then channel 2, that's the one I got going to the injector. I got on the times 10 to match my attenuator, and then it puts me on a 160 volt scale. So I'm going to put this on the tripod, start it, see what we get on the screen, and see if we can tell anything from it. Alright guys, I got it running. Now I'm going to just hit start. Now I'm going to do a snap on it, and then we're going to stop it and see what it looks like under snap, what it looks like at idle. Okay, let's stop that. Okay, now our scaling, we got to get right on to see if we could tell which injector is which. So there's some other noise in that circuit. Sometimes the coils are in the same fuse. It's only marked as an injector, but we could see the ramp going up to number 1. So you could, if you had an injector problem, you could definitely, if you knew your firing order, just assume it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Seen a couple spikes in here also, but I'm not sure if that's part of the noise, but we could tell on the injector, these bigger ones, that's your injector current. You could also count too, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So we keep going back to it. And this, I don't know, the AC voltage on it was like 128 millivolts. 50 is about the limit. So the alternator is putting out a little bit more AC, but this is amperage. We're not really going to see a lot of that on here. I'd attribute this to something else electrical in the car. These ramps, this would actually be the current building and these on top of it. So being we're not on an individual injector, they're not really smooth ramps. But we can tell if it's missing one very quickly. If you don't see a current ramp, you know you got injector trouble. Either the control circuit or the injector itself is gone. But we could see the number 1 injector. You could see a small pintle hump there. Looks a little bit on the small side, but sometimes you don't even, certain injectors, you don't even see them. And it looks like it's pretty repetitive, the same hump. But that's when your pintle should be moving. Right in there, that gives it, that's the injector closing. Now you will see one on the yellow. You will see a current ramp for that, but being that we're on this other circuit and getting this other noise, this wouldn't be a great car to get the current ramp off of the fuse box. Because we keep getting this other noise. And see, like I told you, we were, you know, I overkilled a little bit, but we only need 77 volt. I got it set up for 160. I mean, that's just me being, you know, overcautious, because as much as I use this scope, I don't want to fry it, you know, not for something that you're not even really chasing down. But every time you get a car in the shop that you don't have to, that you're not really pressed for, if you got the extra time and you're waiting for a part, there's no better time to break out the scope and do a little bit of testing. You see, we could see the current ramp building, and then whenever it collapses, that injector fires just like it should. Then it fires all the other ones, and then we're back to firing number 1. That's just a quick test you could do in you know, 10 minutes or less, well, 15 minutes or less, put it that way. That's about what it took me to get hooked up and clamp, because everything was there for me. On the fuse box, I had the fuel injector circuit, and on coils, they're only, or on the fuel injectors, they're only 2-wire injectors, so it was easy to find where I needed the back probe. And they're pretty easy to back probe too, so everything went pretty good for me on that end. But all right, guys, I'm gonna stop out. This is just a quick one, something to do, something I'm doing in the shop, something you could do if you got the time. But I'm gonna show you the RC tests I did with it, and I'm not sure if I saved the charging test where I actually, you know, measured the AC voltage. All right, guys. All right, wasn't nothing major, but it's just something you could do in the downtime. Get out of scope, get out of any scope you got. I mean, you get on something, test it. You know, every car you get on, every time you work on a car, you should at least be using the scope to do a charging test. Because whenever you're doing a charging test, you could check a lot of things. You could check the battery voltage. You could check how low it's going whenever it cranks. You don't even have to get out your amp clamp yet. I always start with just the 2 alligator clamps. That's all you need. I always keep them on my cables. You know, and I keep them hanging on my box, so every car that comes in, there's no excuse not to at least clamp them on the battery, see what you got. If you see a problem, do a little bit more investigating. I mean, your customers are going to appreciate it if winter's coming and you do a battery test and you tell them, hey, look, you know, this battery's, it's not too good. You know, it's going down like 7.5 volts whenever I crank it. And then you're going to save them for breaking down in the wintertime. They're going to start trusting you a little bit more and more. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, if you got any downtime that you could use this scope, it's going to save you time in the future, because you're not going to be doing it for the first time. If you're looking for something that's bad and you've already checked 10 good ones, it's going to be that much easier. If you're looking for something bad the first couple times you use your scope, you're not going to know what you're looking at. Actually, even on this RC test, I don't know what I'm looking at. It might be brushes, you know, it might be, you know, something else. And, you know, it could be, I wouldn't think it's a horrible connection, because we're getting it on amperage and current. You know, whenever you crank it, it just sounds like a weak battery, but, you know, the proof is in the pudding. You know, it's, you see it on the waveform, there's something definitely dropping out, because as you're cranking it, and you're keeping it cranked, you shouldn't have any dropouts. It should just go up and down, but something should not drop out the whole way to 0 while you're cranking. It'll get a little bit lower, but it shouldn't go to 0. If it goes to 0, you usually got a brush not making contact. But, you know, hey, if anybody sees anything on that waveform that they've seen before and they know what it is, definitely, you know, I'm no authority by any means on this stuff. You know, I'm learning as I go. That's exactly why I'm testing the car that I'm waiting for parts on. You know, it's a 2002 Honda Accord. I mean, you know, this thing's been around for a while, got over 200,000 on it. Things aren't going to be right, but it was nice to see the injector. It was nice to see the current ramps. Getting it from the fuse box, I mean, that's a quick, dirty way, and it is real dirty. Your waveform is going to be dirty, especially if there's coils on that circuit too, but you could still see the 4 ramps. If you're going for a misfire while you're doing that, well, there's going to be a ramp missing, or there's going to be a really low one. But that'll point you in the right direction. If you already got one of them probed, then you could identify your cylinder. You're like, this good one was this injector pattern. Now I know which injector to go after. This is number 1. That's what it's all about, identifying the cylinder the easiest way possible. And in 15 minutes, you could do that. You could tell what injector needs done if you got an injector problem, or you could just take a look at them like I did. For no reason, you know, take a look at them. Hopefully you see all 4 or 6 or 8. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I try to make little videos like this, and anything I find that I haven't really probed before, anything that might be of interest. And I mean, a lot of it's just like, hey, you know, ask it for something. You know, if somebody's seen that waveform, or you know, thinks it's brushes even, you know, even if you agree with me, you know, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. All right, guys, have a good one. Adios. Morning, guys. It's the next morning. I'm still, you know, waiting on the boot for the CV boot for the Honda Accord. One of the biggest things I like about 8-scope is it's on my tablet. So all the images I made yesterday are on my tablet. When I'm in the house, I usually use the tablet more than I use my laptop. So I consider that a huge plus. Just being able to pull up a waveform I captured yesterday, compare it to anything else I see in a book like Danner's book, for example, or a YouTube video. If you pause it and you're like, wait a minute, I could just open up 8-scope on my tablet that I'm watching this YouTube video on, do a little bit of comparison. But what I did is I looked at a couple, because myself using this scope, I've never found like a starter at the brushes were going on or anything like that. AC voltage is, it doesn't have, it's not very rare, but, it doesn't happen all the time. But it's good to check for, especially if you're having electrical issues. If you're not having electrical issues, I mean, you rarely check for the AC voltage. But one of the main things I just wanted to do here is show you some of the waveforms I captured. I'm going to switch over because that's what makes that real nice too. Is I have it on my tablet. I could do a screen recording over 8-scope and explain what's going on, or what I think's going on. And it's also a good time to look for input because there's a lot of people out there that know a lot more about scopes in general, that know more about 8-scopes, that could just say, hey, and that's all I learned. That's how I get all the feedback from the comments. I mean, it's the biggest plus of being on YouTube. I mean, you get feedback from what you just did. Not this is how you do something. It's something you already got the image for. You got the waveform for. You can make measurements. And with 8-scope, I mean, with other scopes too, Picoscope, I know you could do that. You could actually share via the cloud. You could share your waveform with other people. If they're just looking at your video and they're like, I kind of think I know what's going on, but I really need the waveform. I need to make some adjustments. You could send them the waveform. You upload it to the cloud. It gives you an ID. They type any ID. Their waveform's loaded into their 8-scope. So it's, it's a very good platform to learn. It's a very good platform to, share. And that's what's important because, I mean, there's no classes. You could go to Rosedale. It's about 40 miles away, and Scanner Danner's the teacher, and you're going to learn some things. But how many times have you heard Danner after, so many years saying, I've never encountered this before? So you got to start that thinking, and you got to start knowing what the scope's telling you. Just like a voltmeter, it does no good to you unless you understand what it's trying to tell you. It's telling you the facts. You just got to understand what they are and how to apply it. Okay, because I'm going to switch over. I'm going to just show you why I had a little bit of confusion what's going on and what I think is possibly bad brushes. It was basically just, hey, I have this car here. I'm waiting on a part. Now's a perfect time. I want to know how many cars, basically what the video was, I want to know how many cars I could just get current ramp for the fuel injectors right off the fuse box. Still early, need more coffee. But I wanted to see how many cars, if there was like, a make, a model, one that you could get them off of better, years that you could get them off of better, types of fuel injectors you could get them off better. And anything like that, anything that you test, if you're testing known good, you're going to remember that. You're going to remember, hey, wait a minute. The first time you see a triple strike ignition on a Ford, whenever you're doing secondary, you're going to be like, what the hell's going on, man? But, that's normal. You got to see it before you know it's normal. Things like that, different, even though we're dealing with the same things, different things have different characteristics. Okay, that's enough rambling. I'm going to switch around. I'm going to go to the tablet. I'm going to do like a voiceover on whatever I found. I want to show you a good RC test. Well, actually, it wasn't good for the car, but it was, the test is what you expect to see. I'm going to show you that real quick and show you what I got yesterday. All right, guys, I'll be back. Okay, guys, I switched over to 8-scope. Now, I opened up this waveform. This is actually a RC test on the V8 Ford, and we could see, patterns repeating. So technically it's a bad RC test. I mean, the results were bad, but the test itself, is as good as you're going to get, I think. But, because we could see when we turned the key on, we could see a drop in voltage. Right in here, you could zoom in even more, however you want to see it, but this would be the solenoid engaging. And then that line goes straight up. That's what we want. Straight up, and one goes straight down. The yellow is the voltage, the green is amperage. The voltage goes down. You could take a measurement of the voltage, but the main thing is, it's not really how to do an RC test, but it's what you should be seeing. These compression humps as they go, you want to see nice even humps like that. We know that starter was engaged and turning the engine over. That's why we could see this so clearly. There's no dropouts. We don't have no noise. It's a good image. Now what I want to do is switch to yesterday's again. This one, this is what I got yesterday. I mean, it looks a little like that. But we could already see there's a lot of difference there. We should be seeing them nice even humps, nice round. Now on this one, the yellow is voltage, the green is amperage. The amperage goes up. The inrush is nice, fairly flat. We could still see the beginning. We could still see where the keys turned on. Right here, it looks like we got a little hash when the solenoid engages. See this? Looks like it missed a couple times. The amperage was going up, then it drops out, then it catches again, then it drops out again. So looks like it started turning the engine on the third try. But once it did start turning the engine, this is what looks horrible. We should not be seeing anything like this. We should be seeing nice round even humps. And I'm going to leave on here a sound of this. I'm not sure if you guys heard me cranking the engine. It sounds like it got a very weak battery, but whenever we check the battery, I mean, on this, you're allowed to go down, on an oscilloscope. You're only looking for, 8 volts is the lowest you could be. We're at 8.52. I mean, it's getting there, but it's definitely, the battery has enough charge in it to turn it. Now, these dropouts are what's one of the things that was pointing me anyways in the direction thinking it's the brushes is because, if you have bad brushes, it's going to sound like it's taking more. It's going to take more amperage, everything to turn your battery or to turn your engine. Whenever it does make contact, then it's going to drop it. So you're not going to see 100% of that. But these flat spots, after cranking it, there was probably only 12 volts left in the battery because we started just a little over 12. We started up at, we started around 12 and a half, maybe a little bit more. But whenever you crank that without the alternator helping, your battery voltage is going to drop. And here we're at like 12.05 volts on these flat spots. So these flat spots, I believe it's missing altogether. This is like, basically opening the brushes. It's just returning your battery voltage. Then we could see down the bottom on the amperage, there's a flat spot too. So this isn't even drawing any amperage while I have the key cranking, and you could hear the engine cranking. We have a couple dropouts here where the voltage returns. Anytime you have bad brushes, when they're not making contact with the commutator, they're going to drop. It's not going to draw any voltage. So the voltage returns to the battery and the amperage returns to 0. But we're not getting anything, any good compression hump looking. So it looks like the brushes are worn out to me. But I mean, for an RC test, man, whenever you see that, you're like, wow, what is going on? But you would have had your humps here, but we see a drop. We keep dropping. So I would consider that the brushes, and as we crank, you could see the batteries getting a little bit lower as we go, but these flat spots keep reappearing. We have dropouts consistently. So I'm not 100% on what this is. That's why I say any input's greatly appreciated. You know, it's like if you have 8-scope and you want to, you know, manipulate it, I mean, I could gladly share the file. You could load it into your 8-scope. I couldn't, you know, even the known good one, I don't like calling it a known good because the car did have problems on a couple cylinders, but the test was a known good test with a lot of definition. If you want to just download the copy of that, hey, drop it in the comments. I'll list it in the comments, and you could download it and manipulate it yourself with 8-scope. What else? And see, this is what's nice about reviewing information at your leisure. Like if you're in the garage and you're in a hurry, and see, actually here it started working like it should. We do see some compression humps. This is what we'd be looking for, something like that. But we're dropping them, we're losing them. There's definitely it's returning to no work while the key's being cranked. But like I was saying, there's always things you see, and I don't believe I showed you whenever I came to a rev on this car. This is where I was getting the injector current ramps off of the fuse box and getting the injector pattern. Now, what I found was something weird that you might not have found on the spot unless you're actually taking the time while you're in the garage. There was one injector, it looked like it fired 2 times right here. Oh, let me take this away. Right here, we could see the current ramp, and then we have the injector firing, and then we have another real fast ramp, and then we have the injector firing again. And as we look, there's like another injector firing. And see, I don't know what all the noise on this is. It's hard to tell what else they put in the seconds or on the circuit. But we see this would have been the current ramp with all this noise on it. With the coils, I'd expect a little bit more. That's what I was thinking some of them spikes were, but the coils should make a bigger spike. And they don't seem to line up. Like while this injector's firing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, and this little one here. So this is only telling me, you know, the gist of whenever a coil's firing. But we can see we have, over here we have one event, and then we'll count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're back to number 1. So these are all injectors firing also. But as we get to that one, that just don't belong, because here we have an event. 1, 2, 3, 4. A double event counts as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 again. So these two current ramps, and it looks like it was doing this on this injector and this injector also, but not this injector. Now that's just something random that I can't tell you what it is because I don't know what it is, but I don't think that injector would have intentionally fired twice that close, because you could even see the pulse width, this green line here, and look how short this one is. Injectors usually, I mean, they'll control this pulse width, and it's almost like saying the computer gave it a double tap, which in reality, it would have just kept this injector open longer. Now under full snap, let me zoom out a little bit. Under full snap, oh, that's where we started. It looks nice and even. We see even. Now this is the pulse width changing because I'm on a D cell. See how the injector, whenever I'm on it, it makes the pulse width longer from here to here. If you want to measure it, you hit the plus button. I'm not going for 100% accuracy because my screen's rolling a little bit, but we'll say there, and then drop another one. And then I'll tell you time, just like measuring the burn time. Tell you 13.37 milliseconds. Now you can move to the small one on the D cell. I mean, we don't even need to measure these. And actually, he did add a lock feature, I believe, that we could move the whole, that'll lock our cursors so you could drag them ball down. And we could see the difference in, and I'm a tiny bit over, but I mean, you could see the major difference there. We're not doing any actual measurements, but that's on D cell. That's when your fuel injectors, I mean, you're coming down, you took your foot off the brake, they'll keep narrowing this pulse width. There on that D cell, it didn't even fire. It's just letting it come down. And then we go into another, one last snap. And we don't see number one firing again on another snap. Down here you could see. All right, that was just something odd I picked up that I wanted to share with you on that one, because I didn't show you the actual rev events like that. Whenever you're under stress, what the fuel injectors are doing and what you can do once you're hooked up. It comes in really handy for, hunting an ejector down. Now what I'd do before I did anything with injector, if I was having a problem with the fuel, what I'd probably do is, what I'd definitely do, because I don't like this amperage measurement from the fuse box, that would be if I was missing one, it would point me right in that direction. I'd know, in being synced on one already, I'd know right which one it was, whether it was number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of engine you got, as long as you know the firing order and you just identified one of them current ramps with a good fuel injector pattern, then all you do is go with your firing order after that. But it leaves some mysteries, things out there. I mean, it's good things to research, because sometimes I'll have a waveform and I'll want to know something about it. It might take me 3 or 4 days and the car's long gone. But if I still had a question about it and I think it's going to help me in the future, I'm still watching YouTube videos. I'm still watching, any kind of website that's going to have that what I'm looking for in its content. So hey, you know, that's how you learn things. In case you see them again, you don't want to be confused then. You want to get it done, get it, you know, back to the owner. All right, guys, thanks. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and I actually hope some of you agree with me and think that that's brushes, because that would be my guess. You know, if this was a multiple question, I don't even know what the next question would be. I'm going to say brushes and commutator. Let me know what you think, guys. All right, have a great one. Adios. Because there always seems to be one last final note. And I know I mentioned AC voltage on the system, and I didn't really show you what I was talking about. Now this is a quick one while you're on there too. What you do is you put the channel on AC, so you're only measuring the AC voltage. So it's going to be a very small amount. And 50 millivolts is the max. Some cars a little bit more, but if you see something like this, some of these peaks here, this is what all the accessories on. We're getting 254 millivolts. This was 2000 RPM. We're getting around 173 millivolts. This was at idle. We're getting some of them peaks are over 152 millivolts. So no car should be happy with 152 millivolts. So that's what you want to do. I mean, it's quick to do while you're on there, while you're on the scope. If you're doing a charging and starting test, and it's easy to do, especially if you see something crazy, because sometimes you do see, you know, pronounced humps if you have the AC voltage. But it's a little bit too much for it. You know, I know a little bit more about this car than you even should have, but that's a good thing. That's just hooking up 8-scope while you're waiting for a part. I was able to test the AC voltage, relative compression test, probe an injector, get, you know, current ramps for the injector from the fuse box. You know, it would have been better getting it straight from the injector. That's where I would have went if I had a problem, but I didn't want to cut the factory harness. Just, you know, I couldn't get the amp clamp around it. It has a pretty good wire sheathing on it, so I didn't want to cut that just to do an amperage test or something I'm not even checking. So that's where I would have went next, though, if there was a problem. But at this rate, I know a lot more about this car. If I get a call from Jim saying his car won't start, you know, I'm going to assume this thing needs a starter more than the battery, even though visually I can't see the starter, and the battery, you know, it's questionable. But it passed. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to include everything. If I talk about something like the AC voltage and you were curious and I didn't leave you a waveform, well, I'd feel bad. So that's it, guys. Have a good one. Hasta la vista.